people of ENOG. I'm Axel Pavlik. I'm the Managing Director of the RIPE NCC, and it is my happy duty to welcome you. Welcome to the 13th ENOG, and welcome back if you have been at the morning tutorials already. Welcome back from lunch as well. Well, what can I say? Lots and lots of people have registered. I don't think we have 470 people in here right now, but I'm sure they'll come. 31 countries represented at this ENOG. That's a lovely number. And yeah, checked in so far as of about probably half an hour ago, 257. That's not bad either. So welcome again. It's a pleasure for me to be back in St. Petersburg. Haven't been in a while. And no, lovely weather, sun and a park outside. Great. But of course, we are not coming here for the park and the sun. We want to sit inside in the air-conditioned building with lots of lights on and listen to interesting presentations. So first of all, thanks to the presenters, but also thanks to the people who have donated their time to go through all the presentations and who have assembled the program. So the ENOG Program Committee, thank you very much. We'll have a longer list, maybe even some photos of them afterwards. But for now, thank you, and I'm looking forward to an interesting program. Speaking of presentations, as has become the custom, you can, of course, and you should rate the presentations, see whether you like them or not. And on the ENOG website, you can give your comments, and if you're lucky, you might win a lovely Amazon voucher to spend on a gadget of your choice, or some good book as well. All presentations that we give in the plenary can be rated, so please do that. Oops. All right, and here we go. Where are we? In any case, somebody help me. You have been accustomed to the good, thank you, whatever that was. I'm not touching anything. Can you please forward the slides? No. Okay, the good custom that we have networking dinners in the evenings, and that wasn't me at all. But there's a networking dinner tonight at 8 to tomorrow morning. It's quite a bit down the road, and I assume we will have buses. I'm not touching this thing at all. It just does whatever it wants. And tomorrow we have a reception at the end of the proceedings that will give us the opportunity to say goodbye until the next time. You have seen a slide with lots of heads on it. That's all the RIPE NCC stuff that we brought here. You will recognize us by the yellow badges, so just grab us and talk to us, whatever is on your mind. We are very happy. We actually come here for your feedback. We are very happy to hear from you what you like, what you don't like, about ENOGs, about the RIPE NCC, our services and the like. You have seen another slide very shortly with the wonderful Anna and Tatiana on it. Those are the ladies that stand outside possibly right now, unless they're in here for a moment, to talk to you about all your customer services, registration services, things, also to receive your feedback on all things that you want to talk to them about. Please do take the opportunity to engage with them. What else? Sessions here are recorded in webcast, so typically people out there in the countryside don't know who you are, probably. So it's just polite and good practice to mention your name and your affiliation when you go to the mic and talk. And with that, I think, I, of course, thank all our sponsors. There's NetNod, the Internet Society, the Technical Center of Internet, DDoSguard and GlobalNet for connectivity. Thank you very much, people. And our host, Elena, if you want to come up and say something, the Moscow Internet Exchange, that would be lovely. And that was me for this morning. You'll see more of me, of course, in the breaks and tomorrow afternoon with my presentation. So thank you very much. Have a great 2 days, and I would love to talk to you and hear what you have to say. We have a social tonight as well. I'll be there, you'll be there probably. So thank you very much.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. For a long time, MX in spring comes to St. Petersburg. Sometimes it may be ENOG. This year, we are very happy that ENOG has come to St. Petersburg. I am very thankful to the organizing committee of the conference for the opportunity for the choice of St. Petersburg. It's a very good idea. MSK. There is a kind of tradition prohibiting to do commercial presentations. I'd like to draw attention to this commercial project that has ENOG topics as well. It's the journal that is called Internet from Inside. It's a new edition. It's hot news. This edition has come to St. Petersburg only today, and you can get free of charge this journal. I'd like to draw your attention to this journal due to the following thing. We have issued this for the second year. Among the authors, mostly they are international experts, and I'd like to offer to all of you, if you have the strength, please participate in our project, and maybe you can write an article. Then next topic is peering. Peering is very close to our topics under discussion. I wish everybody interesting presentation, interesting meetings, and very long aftertaste after this conference. Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of the organizing committee, welcome. The program committee is a group of 20 volunteers who deal with the program of conference. We started to do this work in January this year. This slide shows all the list of those of the program committee members. Dear colleagues, you can recognize these members by this red badge. I'm very thankful to everybody who has worked on this program together with me. A few words about the program of this conference. We are still receiving the request for presentation, the presentations, the format time, 10 minutes together with the questions. If you have something to share, please send the application for these presentations. Presentations will be shown tomorrow during the second part of the day. The Internet Exchange. Today at 17:20 we will have the Internet Exchange panel. We sent all the invitation practically to everybody known Internet Exchange pointers registered in the conference. Sometimes we might missed somebody. If you didn't receive the invitation, please contact Alexander, Martin, or me. The PGP key signing ceremony will be conducted tomorrow, 11:30, after the first plenary section. For participation, you should send your public key to this address or to the address that is publicized in the email and come to the conference together with ID, your ID. We have the archive that is available at ENOG.net. If you missed something or if you didn't receive the invitation, you can enter these archives. If you have any questions as to PGP key signing ceremony, refer to Anton Baskov. We have started preparation to the next conference, ENOG, that will be hosted in Minsk in October 2017. Please plan your trips and allocate time, either as a participant or as a speaker. I'd like to ask everybody, please carry your badge so that your name will be readable on approaching you. ENOG, it's a plenary section, and it's an opportunity to meet up with your friend without introducing yourself. But first of all, it's people who deals with the internet. It's the opportunity to improve our connections in the internet community, in our community. I'd like to invite those who are interested to participate in the program committee work. For just at the end of the year, we will send for volunteers this offer to participate in the committee work. How to better spend RIPE NCC members' money, and how the program committee thinks how to participate in our section in the RIPE meeting that has been conducted in Budapest. Now in St. Petersburg, we organized several discussions. Please participate in the discussions, and please, how to better spend RIPE and NCC members' money. Participate in both section and on the discussion RIPE NCC services tomorrow 5:40.
Now I'd like to give the floor to the moderator of today's session. Good afternoon once again. Good afternoon. Now we are turning to the session itself, and we will have 2 reports, each one of 30 minutes, and the session will be opened by Mr. Jeff Houston, and he will be talking about the death of transit and beyond.
Hi and good afternoon everyone. My name is Jeff Houston. I'm with ENOG, which is the Regional Internet Registry of the Asia Pacific. You know, they taught me 2 foreign languages at school, which in Australia, a long way from anywhere, even 2 foreign languages is an achievement. One was French, the other one was German. I know no Russian, none, I'm sorry. So this will be in English, and I hope the translators can do a fine job, or you can follow along. What I want to talk to you this afternoon about is actually a bigger topic than technology. I want to talk to you about the changing face of the internet itself. I've been to the equivalent meetings in North America, the North American Network Operators Group, NANOG, for some time. And oddly enough, over the last couple of years, the conversation has changed. At NANOG, they don't talk about transit, or even routing for that matter. There's an awful lot of talk about north-south and east-west, and data plane switching, and software-defined networking, and short-circuit VPNs, and everything you find in data centers. It seems that the entire conversation of NANOG is now about data centers. And I'm kind of wondering, maybe that's the conversation about the internet itself. Maybe the entire internet is data centres. Let's kind of follow that thought and see where it leads us, because I don't want to talk about plans or technologies. I don't want to talk about any particular thing like why MPLS is horrible, and it is, or why software-defined networking doesn't work, and it doesn't. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the bigger picture and about architecture itself. And I want to talk about the evolution of the internet's architecture and what it means not only for technologists, but public policy itself. Who's looking after the internet? What do we want from the internet? Who's looking after those interests? We are a product of telephony. Our heritage is the telephone network. That's a great picture. That's almost anywhere on the planet in 1930 or so. I think it's somewhere in the United Kingdom, but who knows? Everyone had them. Lots of people putting switches in to connect phone calls. The telephone network was the biggest thing we built last century. It employed the most people and generated the most money. It was massive. And what it did was connected endpoints to endpoints. You couldn't ring up the telephone network. There was no such thing that you could call. It created circuits through to connect handset to handset. So if you think about it, this was a network that connected edges and was functionally rich. Everything that the telephone network did was programmed in to the switches inside the network. The handsets, the old analog equivalent of these, if anyone still remembers what a handset looks like, a bit of plastic, speaker and a microphone for you kids. We used to use them a lot. Handsets didn't do anything. It just had dial on it and a few numbers. So everything was in the middle. Computer networks, and this is a picture of not the first, but one of the very early interface message processors used on the internet, built by BBN. I think it's a 16-bit machine. There's certainly 16 toggle bits, so it must be. Wonderful machine. Not sure it did very much, but this was one of the first of these internet processors. It was built almost precisely the same as the telephone network, same architecture. It was meant to connect computer to computer. And whether the computer was a client or a server didn't really matter, because every connected computer could, if you will, call up another computer and exchange data. You couldn't call the network itself because there was no such thing. And it really didn't matter to these computers if the network was a single passive wire. Remember copper? It came before fibre. A single passive piece of copper, or whether it was a whole bunch of switches. The computers just drove their data through the network. The network was invisible. Now, very similar to telephony, computer to computer, transparent, and the computers either made the call or received the call, client or server. But something they did was really important. Because there weren't humans there, they didn't need to keep time. The only reason why you're hearing what I'm saying is because we share the same time base. So what I say and what you hear occurs in the same time. Computers don't care. It's just a packet of data. It can take its time, it can be garbled. As long as it sort of gets there, that's okay. And if you drop time from the network, you drop cost. You drop an enormous amount of cost. So all of a sudden, computer networking was cheap, really cheap. And that's why we're here today, because fundamentally it was exceptionally cheap. And the internet actually went a little bit further in its architecture. This is not X25. This is not frame relay. This is not MPLS. The actual architecture was one of pure end-to-end, where the middle was just a stateless datagram network. Packets could make it, packets could get dropped. No one cared. What repaired it was the protocols running at either end. TCP, that protocol, is actually the major heart of the internet. Packet switching is really dumb, easy stuff. So all of the stuff that makes the network work is in here and in your machine. TCP is not in the network, TCP is at the edge. And what makes the internet work is that intelligence in the edge. The middle is really, really dumb and really, really cheap because you don't need to do much. And if anything fueled that revolution that is the internet today, it was this idea that I could hand control to the edge and leave the middle doing very little. It was simple, really cheap, unbelievably efficient. Because if you don't have to reserve capacity and do all that stuff that the telephone network did, you can put a huge amount of data on it. And of course, it's highly adaptable. As we've seen today, you can put anything on the internet and it'll work. You can use almost any kind of media you like. Now, there was a joke, I think the date is 1 April 1990, where someone decided that they could write a spec and make it look believable, where we used pigeons to carry the datagrams. Fine joke, ho ho ho, we all laughed. Apart from some Norwegians, they're crazy. They decided that they'd implement the protocol. And so on late April in 2001, they literally did strap up the pigeons, send off the printers, and actually put the internet across avian carriers, pigeon-based internet. It kind of worked, which is actually a testament to the flexibility of this kind of protocol. So what did we do? We took the old telephone network and removed every last bit of functionality from it. We removed time and circuits. And the resultant network was extremely simple. Everything else that we now think of as quality of service was actually done at the edge. Flow control, jitter stability, loss detection, all of that stuff is what your computers do. The network doesn't care. Literally doesn't care. So, what happened? Now again, I have to go back to the telephone world, because in the telephone world, not everyone could be a telephone provider. Very few could. Most countries had one, just one. And everyone was equal. And so what we had was international call accounting settlements. If someone in my country called someone in your country, money changed hands to compensate for the cost of the end-to-end call. But in the internet, we didn't work like that. We started to differentiate between various service providers. So what actually happened was we had this interaction between access networks and transit networks. If you and I both operated a transit network and we couldn't quite figure out if I was bigger or you're bigger, but we wanted to interconnect, maybe we would peer. Maybe we would exchange traffic without money. But if I'm a transit network and you're an access network, you lose. You pay me money, I don't pay you. And so we started tiering in the internet. But the folk on the top actually collected all the money from everyone else. These were the transit networks that spanned countries, spanned continents, and spanned the world. We still have some of them today. Level 3, AS3551 as I recall. UUNet was one of the early ones, AS701. Sprint was there for a while until it sort of went broke. There's certainly been a few in that sort of category. Underneath that were this kind of regional or national networks that are sort of big in their own area, but typically had to buy transit services to reach the rest of the world. And then below that, in the sort of the pecking order, where all the money went to someone else, were the access networks. And so if you follow the money chain, in general, the mid-levels peered with each other where they were in the same place. So they didn't exchange money, they just exchanged traffic. If some of the access networks didn't like paying those mid-levels, they would start to peer with each other, and that's a damn fine thing, it saves them both money. So peering occurs horizontally, money occurs vertically. And that segmentation is something we all accept. We all go to peering meetings and figure out where we lie in the hierarchy. Oddly enough, it's a market, not a regulation. How do you know that you should be my customer? Well, you don't. It's a bit like two animals meeting in the middle of the night, and there's these little pair of eyes looking right at you, and you're trying to figure out, do I eat them? Will they eat me? Or will we do a deal? And that's what peering is all about. Because if you can agree to do a deal, you're okay. If someone's going to eat you, pay them money. But if you think you can eat them, demand money. And if you think that's crude, that's the internet. And that's precisely how it works all over the planet. So it's a market-based outcome, not a regulated outcome. Now, when we then look at the edge network, we started segmenting again, because not everyone publishes data. I don't publish data from my home, I'm just a client. Access networks generally serve clients. I'm behind a NAT. You can't reach me. Even if I tried to be a server, it wouldn't make any sense. Clients can't see other clients. Clients, you and me, connect to servers and services. So interestingly now, the role of the network has changed. It doesn't connect anybody to anybody. No. You're not allowed to talk to each other. It connects you to servers and services. And that's how you speak to each other via intermediaries. So whether it's Gmail or Akamai's web service or any other kind of mediated service these days, what's going on is the network is separating between clients and servers. Now, there's a bit of an issue going on here because we all know as customers we pay. Clients pay. That's the golden rule. Clients always pay. But what if I create a service? What if I'm Apple? What if I'm Google? What if I'm just a local web? What if I'm content? Who should pay whom? You see, maybe those carriage providers should pay me to generate content, because without content, you can't sell a service for clients. They can't talk to each other. The only reason why there's value in the internet is because there's content, so carriage should pay content. The carriage folk go, no, you can't do that. That's not part of the rule. Both ends should pay me, because if you're content, you still need your bits moving around the net. That's my job. I move bits around the net, pay me. So their argument is content should pay for carriage just like any other client. Now, this argument has been going on for the last 25 years. And there's never been any clean resolution until recently. All of a sudden, Google set up a model that was insidiously, I suppose, accurate and right for them. They got advertising to pay and started creating relationships directly with end users. They negated the whole argument. They got their money from a third party, and all of a sudden, content started to rule. So if you think about it, what's going on is that the network and the job is now simple. It delivers users to content. That's all its job is. I'm a content server, you're a user, the network's there to deliver you to my doorstep so I can sell you that content service, whatever it may be. Problem is that model doesn't work very well on the internet, does it? This is a slide taken from a Facebook presentation a year or so ago. They had three data center locations. One in the Eastern Hemisphere, otherwise known as New York, and two in the Western Hemisphere, otherwise known as San Francisco and Los Angeles. As a global strategy, this sucked. It didn't work very well, because as that heat map of delay shows, if you lived in Africa, Facebook was a very long way away and as slow as hell. Even in Asia, it didn't work. So bringing users to a service disadvantages users who are remote. It just doesn't work. You don't get the same service. So it wasn't too difficult to figure out that if you wanted to create a service that has the same parameters all across the world, replicate the service wherever there are users. Just duplicate it. And all of a sudden, inside that network is a content distribution network. And the users only ever see the last mile to their local content distribution point. So all of a sudden, the network is different. Over the last 5 to 10 years, probably only 5, the content data networking business has taken over the internet completely. No matter where you go in the planet, Akamai is within a couple of microseconds away, as far as I can tell. I was sitting in the hotel room here listening to an Australian radio station over the net. Why did it work? Because Akamai. Because there's some Akamai service down the road here somewhere, and the delay to that server is so tiny, it's just seamless. No matter where you are, you're surrounded by content now. So all of a sudden, we don't have to deliver content across long, high-delay paths anymore. Local caching and content distribution has taken over completely. And oddly enough, it's made a better network. So what do network service providers do? They use to bring users to content. Now, content is heading out towards users. So what's their job? Wow. None of us know. Not even they know. Because a number of things are happening that are really quite profound. Tim Strong from Telegeography. Telegeography is an analytics firm that looks at who builds what in terms of infrastructure. They point out that no telco, no telephone company, has built a submarine cable for the last 6 years. No need. No one wants them anymore from the carriage roll. Who's building cables? Well, Google and Facebook just announced a super high-speed, super-duper cable between Los Angeles and Hong Kong for content. Completely different role. So that now, if you look at the sort of analysis they provide, what they're showing is that the carrier systems that were building cables are declining, and what's being replacing it are private cables owned by Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and their like. That all of a sudden, what was a public utility in submarine cable systems are now fully privately owned systems built for content distribution. So this is now becoming quite profound. We've now split the network into clients and servers, so no matter what your service is, it's a service that someone else provides. Does anyone still run their own email service these days, or do we all use Gmail? Oh, thank you, Nigel, there's one. Does anyone still run their own DNS, or do we all use Google's public DNS? You're weird. About 16% of the world's, 3.5 billion people send all their DNS queries to Google. The DNS is a service and Google operate it. Why? Because sometimes this DDoS environment we have is so toxic, you need to build a really, really big castle. And the only folk who have the money to build really, really big castles are the content folk whose job it is to build really, really big castles and defend your traffic. So whether it's Cloudflare or Akamai or Microsoft or Amazon or Google. So all of a sudden, it's a different world. Services are sitting inside these fortresses, and there are a lot of them, which are being built closer and closer to you. Like shopping centres, they're sort of siting next door to where you are. And so now the architecture of the internet is completely different. Why do you have exchange points anymore? So that content can get to you. No other reason. You're just the buffer point between the content networks and the last mile access networks. That's all it is. It's not for those access networks to talk to each other because you've got nothing to say to each other. No one has service and content sitting inside the access networks. Everything is streaming Netflix or whatever happens to be this week. And so the IXPs are really just data center buffer points, and that's their only residual role. So transit is kind of dead because Users don't talk to users. Content increasingly just comes from a very small number of content distribution networks. There's no universal service obligation in that kind of world, and so transit's dying. Because all of a sudden, content is coming close. Akamai is already citing their boxes inside your NAT. What happens when Google and the rest of them do similar? That instead of citing it on the public side, they move in to get even tighter and closer to the user. What if all the traffic does that? What if all the traffic becomes a transaction across that local network? Why do we need global addresses? Because if there's no global traffic, why does it need a global address? Why do you need global domain names? Because if it's all local traffic, I don't care if you use the same name to go to a service over there. I'm using that name to go to my content service over here. And it may be a different service, but neither you nor I care. So all of a sudden, even the global network itself is under threat. That if you think of what the internet is today and the way we use it, what it is, a global network of networks, and the way we use it, I go down the street to my local content mall, are two entirely different concepts. Okay, well, all of a sudden the world gets different where network is being repurposed. Applications that used to use peer-to-peer networking are now being regarded as theft. Edge computers are now just basically televisions into content, and you're losing your privacy because the way this is being done is by making you the target of detailed introspection. So things have changed, and they've changed a lot. We started building a telephone network that used to be that anyone could dial up anyone. We've now built a one-way content distribution centre, which is more like television than telephony. This enterprise model is no longer a public service. It's private. It's no longer telecommunications, it's content, and it's private content. And in the US, for example, where I happen to know more than, say, here, the US has a Federal Communications Commission that looks at how to regulate carriers, people who carry the bits. What does Google do? Google's content. It's not subject to that regulation. What does Apple do? Well, Apple makes stuff, but it doesn't carry bits. It's not subject to that regulation. Same with Microsoft, same with Amazon, same with all of them. It's not regulated the way we used to regulate this. And that means there's no such thing as universal service, no such thing as network neutrality, no right of access. Even concepts such as market dominance are a joke, because content is aggregating like crazy. And there are only a very small number of players who are truly, truly massive. These are the 10 richest companies in the planet. Number of shares times shareholder value. Apple, Alphabet was Google, Microsoft and Amazon are the 4 richest companies on today's planet. Berkshire Hathaway, an investment firm that owns a lot of Apple shares, so maybe they don't count. ExxonMobil does oil. Johnson & Johnson does petrochemicals. Oh, there's Facebook, another one. JP Morgan Chase is a bank, and Wells Fargo is I think it's a bank these days. 5 out of the 10 do content, not carriage. Content truly is king. Content rules. This isn't AT&T, British Telecom, Deutsche Telekom, or anyone else in the carriage business. These are relationships based on content service, not carriage. And so then you start to ask, is this competition as we thought about it, or is this actually distorted markets? Have we created a cartel? Do they get to set their own rules? Does Apple really pay no tax at all to anybody? They set their own rules and live by them. They're so dominant, it just doesn't matter. And you go, well, that's new. No, it's not. We were here once before. This is the Gilded Age. I saw this in an art museum in Atlanta, in Georgia. And what it refers to is America about 140 years ago, just after the Civil War. where all of a sudden the industrial process took off and a small number of folk, and Andrew Carnegie, US Steel, John Rockefeller and so on, took over the country, literally took over the country. And it was called the Gilded Age and not the Golden Age because the layer of wealth was only as thick as those few people and their friends. No one else enjoyed the richness that was coming from all of this value creation. So it was that mix of industrial innovation with greed, corruption and labour exploitation. Everything that was wrong about that society at the time also created vast wealth. And what happens? Well, the rich folk dominated the political process. That's a cartoon at the time showing these gilded barons telling Congress what to do. And it took the US, some would argue 100 years to rip that apart. But do you remember J.P. Morgan Chase in that list? J.P. Morgan, 140 years before that. We still haven't got him. The bugger is still there. Maybe his sons are, but we still haven't got him. These things take centuries to rip apart once you distort society so badly. Centuries to pull it back together again to create it more equal. That was then, this is now. And there's no difference. Absolutely no difference. Because the internet is not hundreds and hundreds of players. It's a very small number of players. The internet is no longer regulated because those players are decades faster than regulation. And they're effectively defining the terms of their own competition. How much tax they pay, how much influence they have is up to them and not you. All of the ideas that we could curb this market excess are useless because the internet today is dominated by that very small number of players, them. And it is indeed truly gilding. You don't share in that wealth, I don't share in that wealth. A very small number of players are dramatically wealthy. Apple's fighting fund, $257 billion. They could literally buy governments, they could buy anyone else on the stock exchange completely. So much money. With no agenda other than their own. So, where does this go? A bit like then, these folk are well in front of everyone else. They're taking their own position and almost governments have to run with it. They've got no choice. They're defining their rules of engagement with themselves, each other's, third parties. And you kind of wonder, was that the internet we meant to build? When Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn had this idea, when we thought about what computers could do for the benefit of all of us, we didn't think that was what we were building. But that's what we've built. And this is a conversation that's now gone completely in a different role. This is not just about carriage and not just about communications. I don't think it's even a conversation about the mechanics of networking. This is a conversation about the public and the public service. This is a conversation about, I think, a very, very basic theme. How do we all benefit from the internet and not just a few? How can we enrich all of our lives and not just enrich a couple of companies? How can society benefit from this quite extraordinary tool? The world is literally sitting behind this screen, no matter wherever I go on the planet. Why can't we all have a share in that phenomenal possibility? Why did just a few folk get all the money? So that's the conversation I'd like you to think about. And certainly it's a conversation, I think, of our time. Because like the Gilded Age of 140 years ago, if we get this wrong, we're going to have to live with its ramifications for the next 150 years or more, and we might not like that. Thank you. Do you want questions now?
Do we have time for questions?
Questions?
Any?
Alexander Sam.
PhD capacity.
Started from guess that's core of internet just passing packets, nothing special, nothing outstanding, but actually now it is not. Lawful intercept, illicit content blockage, and something like. What will see your presentation a year or two modified with this maybe affections to the core of internet?
If I was a policeman and I wanted to find out about you, I wouldn't go and look on the wire. I'd ask Google. I'd try and force Google to tell me about you, because Google know a lot more about you than anyone else, even you. And in some ways, because we have these companies whose aim in life is to profile every individual user, then maybe the point of where this kind of lawful role comes is no longer the network. The network knows nothing. So this whole idea that I can look at the network, tap it, and understand what you're doing, complete nonsense. But if I ask Google, I know what you're doing. Because the police have always worked with the telephone companies, tapped the calls, looked at that, they see the telephone, or indeed the network, as an easy target. On the internet, I encrypt, you encrypt, we all encrypt. On the internet, we all use carrier-grade NATs because we ran out of addresses. On the internet, nothing on the wire means anything at all. In this world of multipath TCP, of Google running encrypted quick, nothing in the network makes any sense. I can evade, and you can evade, and anyone can evade any kind of network-based control. We all know that. So how do you get around that? Stop looking in all the wrong places. There's this joke, hopefully it'll translate if you're listening. A drunk is, let's call it in Dublin, because they're always drunk in Ireland, aren't they? Who's in the middle of the night, underneath a lamppost, looking on the ground. And a passing policeman says, "Can I help you? Have you lost something?" And the drunk goes, my keys, I can't find my keys." And the policeman sort of starts to help and very quickly says, "They're not here." And the drunk says, "I know they're not here, but the light's better under the lamppost." The police are doing precisely the same thing. They look at the network because the light's better, not because the answer's there. The answer is somewhere else, and I wish to hell that sooner or later they'd get that clue and go and look where the answers truly are. They'd stop wasting all of our time.
Okay, thank you for the joke, because well, our officials do not believe us. Well, we tell them exactly the same joke, but now we can reference to Jeff Houston.
Thank you.
Hi, does this work? Dmitry Kochmanyuk, Ukraine. Thanks for your presentation. I just had a quick question. Are you on Snapchat?
Am I on Snapchat?
Not, right?
Oh, I am on Snapchat.
Okay, great. So, do you
My
think...
son was thinking of working for them.
Right. Oh, great. So, I bet you don't ever make these phone calls to Australia, right? Because it's kind of expensive, right? My point is that I think there's only one enemy left of these, carrier takeover is messaging, including video messaging, all of these things. Okay, maybe if you use FaceTime, it goes through Apple servers, right? But it's still not quite the cached content. And the second one, of course, is those lovely VPN providers, which now even have a better day because, each country now has something blocked, right? And if you want to use LinkedIn in Russia, or maybe you want to go to Yandex Maps in Ukraine, or you go to, well, you got my point, right? So can these two categories win? I mean, maybe they
VPNs are living on borrowed time. The only reason why VPNs are economic is because there's a huge amount of normal transit traffic. And so then I overlay my encrypted tunnel, or whatever it is, as a VPN, and it's cheap. But if all the other traffic goes away, because the shopping centres move to outside my door, where's all the transit traffic to subsidise the VPN traffic? It's gone.
Like the post office, if it would have no advertising.
As a network provider, my aim is to make money, not to service every need you have. And when we look at today's networks, if I can't use you to get to Google, you'll fix it. You'll fix it that instant because Google is important to you and your customers. But if someone rings you up and says, "I can't get to Australia," you go, "Yeah, tough, eh? I don't care." And you don't. There's no money in it. So increasingly now, we're not building a comprehensive network that does transit. We're building networks that service CDNs and nothing else. That's a big change.
Right, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Yuri Kargopolo from Ukraine. What do you think about two miracle words, net neutrality?
So can you repeat that again? What do I think?
What do you think about two miracle words, net neutrality?
Oh, all over. Sorry, gone, finished, whatever. It only mattered when the content was away from the user and you're trying to talk to the person in the middle saying be neutral. I can go outside here and buy anything from the local shop. I don't need to go to somewhere else. Everything is for sale here, right here in front of me. The internet is now exactly the same. Almost all of the data that I need today is actually coming from caches here in this city. Where's the network neutrality in that? Well, it's not a big problem anymore. So I think technology has moved on and our model has moved on. This whole idea that these lines that sort of span the continent and span the country and they need to be neutral, no traffic anymore.
So net neutrality is death?
We don't have a need for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. As you see, I have an opinion or two.
Dmitry Brukov. Jeff, can you evaluate what's the future for public policy regulation?
You know, this is the same problem that was posed by the Gilded Age 140 years ago. What do you do when the giants dominate our world and are almost untouchable? They pay no tax. They respect no country's regulation. Their privacy rules are theirs, not ours. What do you do? I dare anyone to try and live Google free. You can't. So how do we change this? How do we stop this? All I can offer, and it's not much, is to at least understand that that's what's happening today. That the internet today is not the internet of even 5 years ago. That it's changed in such a way that this is now a real problem for all of us. How do we create a more equitable environment that isn't dominated by 5 US-based businesses? Why is it so difficult for companies here in this continent? Fastly is a great example. The folk who own it, the folk who work for it, almost everything about that company is European except it's an American company. Why have we got it so imbalanced? I don't know, but we have to find out, and literally we have to fix it. This is not sustainable the way it is. It's too imbalanced, and that's going to be a problem. So I can't offer you solutions. I wish I could, but at least we know what to talk about, don't we?
I don't understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.